important is equity in the Caribbean, trying to identify that space and capture its full potential, especially for groups like the Rastafarians who have, for decades fought for this cause, and they have this sort of fear that, they might be pushed out for big business when the thing actually gets going. So how important is it to provide equity for an equal chance to access licenses?
It's incredibly important. Capitalism is what capitalism is. So if you're not intentional in the policies, you won't get it. Where you spend your effort, energy, and time is where you will see the largest policy growth to happen. And if it's not embedded, then money flows to its lowest point. Money's going to do what it's going to do. I also think that there is a very real necessity to get away from a patriarchal understanding of what it is we need to teach the Caribbean and understand what the Caribbean can teach us. And that means respecting the culture. That means understanding people who have this deep well and base of knowledge and not making it, like intentionally taking each of those barriers to entry and trying to knock each of those things down. It has to be embedded in the policy itself. Otherwise, you will be left behind, because most communities, most indigenous communities in whatever country you're talking about don't have access to capital like that. So it has to be thought out, planned out, intentionally embedded, before you lose the historical and cultural knowledge that can actually is probably the biggest export you have, which is just that you don't think about Jamaica without cannabis. So how could it be that there wouldn't be owners and people participating in this multi-billion-dollar industry as it grows, especially as more countries come online, the trade opportunities itself. So if you don't center the people who have been harmed the most by the prohibition, then you're really not having an equity conversation. Mm-hmm. Equity is not diversity and inclusion. Equity is not in the cannabis space. Equity is centering the people who have been harmed the most by the prohibition of the activity you are now authorizing. You cannot leave people behind and consider yourself moving forward in an equitable space. That's not the definition of equity. That we have to fight for that. We have to continue to educate on that. We have to train on that. And I want to be really clear, equity in the cannabis space is centering people who have been harmed by what you're about to authorize. Diversity and inclusion is absolutely the way you want to build institutions and organizations and businesses. You want to build businesses that look like the people where they are. That's a laudable, necessary goal. But it is not cannabis equity, because there were certain populations that weren't targeted, that didn't have to deal with the impacts of what it means to be, tangled up within law enforcement in whatever country you live in. And for some of these countries, draconian drug laws are, draconian drug laws and law enforcement impacts that can't get past a conversation beyond inebriation and really look at regulating this entire plant and how it can be used and processed, manufactured, traded, grown, shared, all those things, all the things that come with that. So equity is, it runs the risk of becoming a buzzword if we don't continue to do the education and advocacy we need to explain what equity really is. And if you have an industry that's built and that industry looks nothing like the people that you are requiring to support it, then you're not having a real equity conversation. That starts with people, and it starts with centering the people and their needs in the midst of any policy decision you make.